Section 4 of the American Rivals of Sherlock Holmes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The American Rivals of Sherlock Holmes. The Montezuma Emerald by Rodriguez Ottolenghi. Is the inspector in? Mr. Barnes immediately recognized the voice and turned to greet the speaker. The man was Leroy Mitchell's English valet. Contrary to all precedent and tradition, he did not speak in Cockney dialect, not even stumbling over the proper distribution of the letter H throughout his vocabulary. That he was English, however, was apparent to the ear, because of a certain rather attractive accent, peculiar to his native island, and to the eye because of a deferential politeness of manner, too seldom observed in American servants. He also always called Mr. Barnes Inspector, oblivious of the fact that he was not a member of the regular police, and mindful only of the English application of the word to detectives. "Step right in, Williams," said Mr. Barnes. "What is the trouble?" "I don't rightly know, Inspector," said Williams. "Won't you let me speak to you alone? It's about the master." "Certainly. Come into my private room." He led the way, and Williams followed, remaining standing, although Mr. Barnes waved his hand towards a chair as he seated himself in his usual place at his desk. "Now then," continued the detective, "what's wrong? Nothing serious, I hope." "I hope not, indeed, sir. But the master's disappeared." "Disappeared, has he?" Mr. Barnes smiled slightly. "Now, Williams, what do you mean by that? You didn't see him vanish, eh?" "No, sir, of course not. If you'll excuse my presumption, Inspector, I don't think this is a joke, sir, and you're laughing." "All right, Williams," answered Mr. Barnes, assuming a more serious tone. "I will give your tale my sober consideration. Proceed." "Well, I hardly know where to begin, Inspector, but I'll just give you the facts, without any unnecessary opinions of my own." Williams rather prided himself upon his ability to tell what he called a straight story. He placed his hat on a chair, and standing behind it, with one foot resting on a rung, checked off the points of his narrative as he made them, by tapping the palm of one hand with the index finger of the other. "To begin, then," said he, "Mrs. Mitchell and Miss Rose sailed for England Wednesday morning of last week. That same night, quite unexpected, the master says to me, says he, 'Williams, I think you have a young woman you're sweet on down at Newport.' 'Well, sir,' says I do know a person as answers that description, though I must say to you, Inspector, that how he ever came to know it beats me. But that's aside, and digression is not my habit. Well, Williams,' the master went on, 'I shan't need you for the rest of this week, and if you'd like to take a trip to the seashore, I shan't mind standing the expense and letting you go.' Of course I thanked him very much, and I went, promising to be back on Monday morning as directed. And I kept my word, Inspector, though it was a hard wrench to leave the young person last Sunday in time to catch the boat, the moon being bright and everything most propitious for a stroll, it being her Sunday off and all that. But as I said, I kept my word, and was up to the house Monday morning only a little after 7, the boat having got in at 6. I was a little surprised to find that the master was not at home, but then it struck me as how he must have gone out of town over Sunday, and I looked for him to be in for dinner. But he did not come to dinner, nor at all that night. Still, I did not worry about it. It was the master's privilege to stay away as long as he liked, only I could not help thinking I might just as well have had that stroll in the moonlight Sunday night. But when all Tuesday and Tuesday night went by, and no word from the master, I must confess that I got uneasy. And now here it's Wednesday noon and no news, so I just took the liberty to come down and ask your opinion in the matter, seeing as how you are a particular friend of the family, and an inspector to boot." "Really, Williams," said Mr. Barnes, "all I see in your story is that Mr. Mitchell, contemplating a little trip off somewhere with friends, let you go away. He expected to be back by Monday, but, enjoying himself, has remained longer. I hope that's all, sir, and I've tried to think so, but this morning I made a few investigations of my own, and I'm bound to say what I found don't fit that theory." "Ah, you have some more facts. What are they?" "One of them is this cablegram that I found only this morning under a book on the table in the library." He handed a blue paper to Mr. Barnes, who took it and read the following on a cable blank: "Emerald. Danger. Await letter." For the first time during the interview Mr. Barnes' face assumed a really serious expression. He studied the dispatch silently for a full minute, and then, without raising his eyes, said, "What else?" "Well, Inspector, I don't know that this has anything to do with the affair, but the master had a curious sort of jacket made of steel links, so tight and so closely put together that I've often wondered what it was for. Once I made so bold as to ask him, and he said he, 'Williams, if I had an enemy, it would be a good idea to wear that, because it would stop a bullet or a knife.' And then he laughed and went on, 'Of course, I shan't need it for myself. I bought it when I was abroad once, merely as a curiosity. Now, Inspector, that jacket's disappeared also." "Are you quite sure?" "I've looked from dining room to garret for it. The master's derringer is missing too. It's a mighty small affair, could be held in the hand without being noticed, but it carries a nasty looking ball." "Very well, Williams, there may be something in your story. I'll look into the matter at once. Meanwhile, go home and stay there, so that I may find you if I want you." "Yes, sir. I thank you for taking it up. It takes a load off my mind to know you're in charge, Inspector. If there's harm come to the master, I'm sure you'll track the party down. Good morning, sir." "Good morning, Williams." After the departure of Williams, the detective sat still for several minutes, lost in thought. He was weighing two ideas. He seemed still to hear the words which Mr. Mitchell had uttered after his success in unraveling the mystery of Mr. Goldy's lost identity. "Next time I will assign myself the chief role," or words to that effect, Mr. Mitchell had said. Was this disappearance a new riddle for Mr. Barnes to solve? If so, of course he would undertake it as a sort of challenge which his professional pride could not reject. On the other hand, the cable dispatch and the missing coat of mail might portend ominously. The detective felt that Mr. Mitchell was somewhat in the position of the fabled boy who cried "Wolf!" so often that when at last the wolf really appeared, no assistance was sent to him. Only Mr. Barnes decided that he must chase the wolf, whether it be real or imaginary. He wished, though, that he knew which. 10 minutes later he decided upon a course of action, and proceeded to a telegraph office, where he found that, as he had supposed, the dispatch had come from the Paris firm of jewelers from which Mr. Mitchell had frequently bought gems. He sent a lengthy message to them, asking for an immediate reply. While waiting for the answer, the detective was not inactive. He went direct to Mr. Mitchell's house, and once more questioned the valet, from whom he obtained an accurate description of the clothes which his master must have worn, only one suit being absent. This fact alone seemed significantly against the theory of a visit to friends out of town. Next, Mr. Barnes interviewed the neighbors, none of whom remembered to have seen Mr. Mitchell during the week. At the 6th house below, however, he learned something definite. Here he found Mr. Mordaunt, a personal acquaintance and member of one of Mr. Mitchell's clubs. This gentleman stated that he had dined at the club with Mr. Mitchell on the previous Thursday, and had accompanied him home in the neighborhood of 11 o'clock, parting with him at the door of his own residence. Since then he had neither seen nor heard from him. This proved that Mr. Mitchell was at home one day after Williams went to Newport. Leaving the house, Mr. Barnes called at the nearest telegraph office and asked whether a messenger summons had reached them during the week from Mr. Mitchell's house. The record slip showed that the last call had been received at 12:30 a.m. on Friday. A cab had been demanded and was sent, reaching the house at 1 o'clock. At the stables, Mr. Barnes questioned the cab driver, and learned that Mr. Mitchel had alighted at Madison Square.